And good morning, everybody. Welcome to the
Good
Bible
morning.
study. And this morning we're gonna launch into chapter 14. I know you've been waiting with great anticipation for this, and so we'll move ahead. Chapter 14. Let's dive into it. Last time, at the end of chapter 13, we observed Peter's response to Jesus, which was, I will never deny, or what did he say? I will never deny you, or I will die for you. And little did he know. And we correlated Peter's response with our own life experience. And what I was suggesting is that it exemplifies a human propensity towards false notion. We create false constructs in our heads. And I don't think that takes a lot of gas to fuel. I think we just from our own experiences, we pretty much know that. And we're looking at Peter as the example. We then discussed this idea. We told stories. Bob gave us a really great story last week. Made observations regarding how we've encountered this, both on the reception end and on the perpetuation of false constructs, and through our own life experiences. This is just part of being human, and that's what we talked about last week. Today's text, like I said, we're going to launch into chapter 14, and like we normally do, would one of you guys read that either on the screen or from your Bible, verses 1 through 4 of chapter 14.
Your heart must not be troubled. You must constantly believe in God, and you must faithfully believe in me. In my Father's house are many dwelling places. And if it were not so, would I tell you that I am going to prepare a place for you? And if I would go, then I shall prepare a place for you. I am coming again, and I shall take you along with me, so that where I am, you would also be. And you know the way where I am going.
All right, thank you, Dave. I'm just curious, what is the translation that you read from?
One New Man.
One New Man. So it's more of a modern translation, and it's certainly true to the text.
Well, it actually is published and said to be a translation that is truer to the original Greek and Hebrew.
Yeah,
meaning.
well, in this case, I think that's correct, because I looked at the Greek in this text, because we're going to actually talk about it, not to disprove anything, but it was easy. It was easy to listen to, and I was just curious. So, yeah. Thank you for reading that. And Carl, good morning to you. So let's move into verse 1. We're going to go through verse by verse, the 4 verses. First verse says, do not let your heart be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. Guys, this is so familiar. We have heard this countless times, this text. It's read in multiple different contexts. A lot of times at memorial services to bring comfort to the bereaved family. But it's a wonderful text that is used in many, many applications. And it's the words of Jesus to his disciples. In verse 1, in this verse, Jesus continues. There is no chapter break from 13, I think it's 36, but he's continuing his thought. And his thought is an instructional monologue directed towards his followers in the upper room. And the purpose of this monologue is to prepare his disciples for what is about to occur. They have a distinct imagery at various, I would say they would all land on this truth. They have a perception of what Messiah is to be about. And that perception is that Messiah will be a conqueror of the Roman occupation to some degree. There's certainly variations within that, but they are viewing Jesus as the one who's going to bring deliverance. And rightly so. I mean, that's what Jesus has stated, but they are all operating out of some level of misconception of what this is about. Thus, his preparation for them, preparing them for what is about to occur in the immediate following chapters. Because of their commonly held false perceptions, the bottom, and from their perspective, the bottom is about to drop out. Their expectations, Dave, you've used that word a lot, expectations versus, I think, in anticipation. I may not have that word correct, but they've all got expectations, and those expectations are not going to be met. Morning, Jeff.
Morning, sir. I'm late. My stupid computer decided to update Zoom right when I tried to join.
Oh, well, no worries. It's good to have you. Jesus, being fully aware of what is about to happen and the effect this will have on his followers, I believe Jesus knew what was going to happen. He continues with reinforcing this idea with a directive towards the word trust. In my text, which is the New American Standard Version, it says believe, but I'm taking the liberty to say the word trust. I think it's those two words mean the same thing. Trust. Trust is extremely difficult. Every single time we are asked to trust, it's always a fresh at bat. It's always a challenge to trust whenever we're called to do it. And that's what Jesus is directing his disciples within this context of preparation, to trust. What makes this occasion even more challenging, requiring more trust, more difficult, is their false perception in regard to how they think Jesus needs to be. They're operating again from a false perception at various levels. But I would say, this is me talking, I would say Jesus's immediate coming performance is going to disappoint them. They're not going to get it. And they're going to be, their bottom is going to drop out. Thus, his directive could read something like this: don't succumb to how you think it ought to be, disciples. Verse 1, trust in God, trust in me. You don't understand, but it's trust that's going to bring you through it. That's the thrust that I see in verse 1. Verse 2, in my Father's house, he says, are many mansions, or that's my King James, Dave. My Father's house are many rooms, which is not wrong, many rooms. If that were not so, I would have told you, because I'm going there to prepare a place for you. That's verse 2. Here, Jesus supports his directive with the reasoning underlying what just told him. So he made a statement to trust, and now this is the reason why, underlying why they should trust, here in verse 2, and is what he states. Using imagery that his disciples can understand, in my Father's house, he tells them that there exists something for them which is much bigger and more wonderful than they can understand right now. He's using imagery that they can grasp, and he's talking about something really wonderful here. And further, this big and wonderful reality that he's talking about actually, I want you to get this, it actually possesses, this reality possesses the ability to prepare, to actually prepare for their reception prior to their arrival. There is, in a sense, a feedback mechanism, a response of this reality that is in interaction with what is going on at any particular moment. Now, that is some highfalutin language. Let me explain. This big and wonderful place, we call it heaven, fellas. This is familiar to our way of thinking. We understand it. This verse, this section is used to bring comfort to hundreds of thousands of people. And it's all about what is awaiting for the one who is gone. It's often thought of, this text, heaven rather, the way we naturally position this in our heads is, in my analogy, an all-inclusive resort type of place, punctuated by this swimming pool that is absolutely out of this world. I mean, this is the mecca of exclusive properties kind of place, resort where you are all inclusive. That's how, in a very raw sense, that's how this my Father's house is perceived. These words of Jesus, therefore, are commonly viewed as a promise for delayed gratification. Okay, this is where I'm going with this. Okay, first of all, in this life, we go through this mess, and we're really in a mess right now. That's how many of us perceive at various times in our lives this world is. This world is punctuated by mess. Then we die, and when we get to this place that we're talking about, we arrive, we get this, we check in, and there's been all kinds of talk about this, St. Peter and all that, and we get I'm going back to the all-inclusive resort. If we go to a Disney property, we get a little Mickey Mouse watch. I don't know if you've done that. That cracks me up. Well, we get this wristband that allows us free access into this wonderful resort area. And I'm having fun with this, guys, so bear with me. And then we go check into our room, and we get our floaty, and we get our stuff, our noodle, and swimming garb and swimming noodle, and we go down, we splash around for hours, and we lounge in the sun, get baked without sunburn, and we eat cream puffs to our heart's content. I mean, is that having fun with it? So you could do without whatever you have, but I had fun. So, but on the contrary, I don't think this is what Jesus is talking about. And bear with me here. I'd like for us to kind of maybe aim a little higher. What Jesus is talking about is not a static resort property like a giant campus, like you'd go to, these all-inclusive resorts, Club Mecca, or what, Club Med, or, someplace like that. Or, I've actually been to one in Mexico, but I can't remember it. This is not, in my perception, what he's talking about. Where we go.
The only thing we know for sure, Mike, is there's going to be beer in heaven.
Well, I think so. I mean,
of the song that we love so much.
Okay, what is it?
Statler Brothers. I think it's the Statler Brothers. Or will there be Mogan David in heaven? That's the one. If there isn't, I'm not going to go.
Okay, I'll go with that.
The
You know, as
Gatlin
long as
brothers.
there's
There we go.
micro brews, I think we're probably good. I don't know, but what we're trying to get across is that, let's aim higher here. It's actually much more. It's much better than that. It's not about going through hell, dying, and then entering this place of delayed gratification of eternal bliss. I mean, let's aim higher. Rather, and I'm going to continue the metaphor of the exclusive property. This place, whatever this place is, at its core, it's about change. That is what I'd like us to ponder on and chew on. This place is about change. And this means that this place is dynamic, not static. It's in constant flux, and it's in constant preparation for the participants. He says, I'm going to go prepare a place for you. Their soon arrival at the there, whatever place there, let's call it there, their soon arrival at there, which is used in the text. Notice it's italicized. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it'll actually affect the nuance of there. Think about that for a minute. When the place is being prepared for their arrival, and once their arrival happens, that place will change because they are there. Guys, that is profound. Not because I'm saying it, but that is a wonderful idea to ponder. The there is constantly moving towards the good. The participants have been created in a loving relationship with Almighty God. The participants will expire and they will transition into something else called the there. And when that occurs, there is going to change. Wow, that's something that could be talked about over coffee. What this means is what Jesus is calling the there, we call it heaven, actually becomes more. It's changing. Heaven is becoming more through the reception of your presence and mine. It's actually changing. That is what I'd like us to ponder. Now, I've got some notes here. And Dave, this goes back to your initial reading. The word there is italicized because it's not really there. But I had fun with this. I realized the word is not there, but the idea is there. So the textual decision makers insert there. So that was kind of fun. The there is there. He's talking about a there. But here's an acknowledgement of the text. This is true because each has been known. Now, each participant, each human being has been known and uniquely loved by the Creator, God Almighty. God has always known you. I'm applying this to you and I. And he has always loved you because he uniquely created each one of you, and including myself, from the get-go. Now, here's another note. I think this is so important. But I also think that we as believers in Jesus tend to overlook the importance of this. We kind of skim over it. I get it. Well, do we get it? Do I get it? We embrace this idea through faith. And faith is a daily, moment by moment recognition of the fact that what I just stated up there is true. That you and I are loved by God regardless of my behavior, regardless. He has always known you. He has always known me. He has always loved you. The act of creation is an expression of love. And that is true. I think we in our journeys, we learn to embrace that over time, because it's really hard for us humans to embrace that. You mean he loves me? Yes, he loves you. Thus, any enthusiastic host, being God, final preparations have to be made to receive the one who is and has always been loved. And that reception is happening in this place called the there. That which is truly home. When arrival occurs, there changes. That's my point. There will not be the same from there forward. I really think that is an interesting idea. The disciples, you, me, and all of humanity are not meant to merely occupy a lounge chair positioned aside a luxury pool. Rather, our presence brings about change to the whole, and that change is for the good for all that exists. I think that's worthy to think about. You know, it's not going through life and trying to make it, dying and then sitting along a luxury pool. There is so much more. And of course, I'm stating that through faith. In verse 3, he says, and if I go and prepare this place for you, I'm going to come again and will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you will also be. The remainder of Jesus's love-initiated preparation directed to his disciples is the promise of his presence while going through the troubling times that are just about to occur. The disciples will not be left alone to figure out this whole thing by themselves. As they enter the coming difficulty, they will have access 24/7 to a helpline, which is never automated, nor is it ever busy. In fact, regardless of demand or circumstance, they will always reach the same person, Jesus, whom they know quite well and with whom they feel safe. What's true of the disciples is true of you and I. The goal of all this is a state of uninterrupted relationship, regardless of what is about to occur. He promises, I am there, I will not abandon you, and we have a future together. That's how I've summarized verse 3. Jesus is talking about a place which is not a place as we think of place. There are no geographic coordinates to this promised place. This place is a state of existence. Like the disciples, your presence matters. Yes, your presence matters, because that place prepares to embrace and then receive your unique presence. You were known, you were created, you have been loved, and you will be received. And that place, along with all the rest, will be uniquely, will embrace your unique presence upon your arrival. That's the idea. One more verse, and you know the way where I'm going, he says to the disciples. And that's a kind of a enigmatic kind of saying. Let's take a stab at it. At this juncture, Jesus now introduces the term the way. He's going to pick up on that next time. The way. You know, you've heard John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. We're going to look at that. And he's saying, you know the way. So what is he talking about? There's a place called a there, and there is also a way. There's a place and there is a way. And a way is a road, a passage, a means by which to enter this place. It's the avenue. Jesus himself is the way. We've already identified there as a state of existence, not a geographic location. Therefore, what Jesus is saying is that the avenue to this place is what he has been showing them for 3 years, and that is himself. He is the way. Therefore, the disciples know the way, as he just said, because they know Jesus. They know him, and thus they know his way. What he has demonstrated and talked about is the way. This too is the way to the place where he is about to lead them and be with them in an unending relationship. And here's the crux. The way is referring, the way that he's referring to is the process of letting go so new life can occur. That's what he's talking about. And the quote, truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. This is what he's talking about, is the way. This is the way. Table time. Okay, this is counter to how many of us think, because we've been taught that Jesus is this entity that we place our trust into, and that is absolutely true. And that by placing that trust in this entity, I get a ticket and I have access into this pearly gate road that I walk down into this entrance of this resort, and that's where I spend eternal bliss. That's how we've cast it. That's how we've been taught. Many of us, that's how we think. But I'm proposing that what Jesus is stating is something a little bit different, and he's showing them a pragmatic way. I am the way. This is the way. So, table time is, in today's sessions, we propose the idea of a heaven which is in preparation to receive its homecomers. Okay, rather than a static resort-like place, it's actually dynamic. And the author of heaven, or the founder of heaven, the occupier of heaven, is actually, there's a preparation happening all the time to receive the participants of this place. And that's probably a new idea. This place was spoken about as being in a state of dynamic change, this place that we call heaven. What are your thoughts in regard to thinking about heaven from this perspective? So I've got an illustration here. The common way we think of heaven is that it's got a fence around it, and it's a place, it's defined. It's this place with pearly gates. And you enter into the pearly gates and you exist in this place of bliss. And that's where you go. From there, it gets super foggy. We have no idea what's going to happen. Everything from wings and bathrobes, or not even bathrobes, it's like hospital gowns. It's gross. And laying on clouds and playing harps. And there's been all other kinds of things. We humans are trying to grasp something that we just simply don't understand. But the static view of heaven is one way. What I'm proposing is something a little bit different, as based on the text, as I understand it, is that heaven is in a constant state of change due to the recipients. And as we enter this place, my personal presence and your personal presence will actually bring augmentation to that place and improving that place as it's meant to be. That's what I'm proposing. And guys, this is a mind buster, and it could be a great discussion over coffee. And what the discussion can be is, how do I think about heaven? How did Mike propose this idea? What do I buy of that? What do I don't buy of that? What do I think about this place? This place that he calls, there are many rooms, the Father's house. So yeah, Fitz, you got a comment.
Mike, to me, in my cartoon perception of heaven, which I've always held, it's got to ultimately be something that, something that motivates me. It's a hope that's laid before me. It has to be something better than I have now, or it wouldn't be very motivating.
No.
And so that's an individual circumstance. I mean, I presume Jeff Bezos lives in a pretty nice house, I just being what he is.
He's probably got a couple lazy boys.
Yeah. And so what I look at as, boy, this is a pretty glam place. That's heaven to me. To him is where he keeps his lawnmower. That's nothing to him. So the perception of grandeur and reward, and this is heaven, this is wonderful, changes from person to person based on your lifestyle, I guess. A guy who lives in the Congo and a guy who lives in Manhattan have different senses. And that joke with the Mogan David, the street choir, heaven to them is unlimited supply. So but the consistent theme in all of that is it's better than what I have now.
Yeah.
And so I would think that heaven, however you structure it and craft it in your mind, is something that whatever I'm missing now, heaven is going to provide. That's what makes me want to go. If it's going to be the same as I have now, where's the the impetus to go? You know what I mean? It's not a reward if it's just this, like every day I get the same thing. So that's what's always motivated me. And and you can have fun, I do, thinking of what's heaven going to be like. And as I grow up chronologically, it's changed. When I was a kid, heaven is unlimited candy. And, as you're a teenager, heaven is a fast car. And as you get old, heaven is a day of waking up without aches and pains. And, it keeps moving. But the constant to me is it's better than I have now. And so I don't know if you could really say this is what heaven's like, because it changes with different people. But I think the constant coloring is better than you have now.
Case in point, Bill, I want to say something here. I watched a video a few times this last week, a documentary, and there was a man being interviewed in this video, and he's quite a sharp guy. And he was talking about when he was younger, his mother was telling him telling him Bible stories of the bliss of heaven and all that. And it was interesting. He actually broke out in a sweat and in great fear. You mean I have to do this forever? Yeah, because heaven is cast as a something familiar to what we have now. It's not a single car garage dwelling, it's a 3-car garage. And to him, he could cut through at that young age the flack of that kind of thinking. And really, you mean I got to do that forever? Oh, come on. I mean, I think it's, yeah. So anyway, Bill, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting. I was driving back from I got to lower my hand here just a second. Anyway, I was driving back from Iowa and I had a lot of podcasts on. This one is called The Holy Post, and there's a guy named Sky Janthani who's a theologian on it. He's put out a book called What Did Jesus Say About Heaven? They were interviewing him, and he had a really interesting take on it. He said, first of all, heaven's not mentioned in these passages. And second of all, Jesus is about to go to the cross. And so he's going to prepare a place for him. And he said, if you look at the words, there's a lot of interpretive options on here. And he said, the place he's preparing for him is very similar to what you're saying, is to be with him. And basically the church, if you want to put it, that's the place they're going to be. And then if Dallas Willard talks about, if you're living a life of growing and trying to, manifest God's spirit in you and stuff, you're being prepared for a redeemed world, not so much heaven. You're going to sleep, you're going to wake up, and you're going to be resurrected, and you're going to have a redeemed world. So it's kind of like you're being prepared for a passage there. It's not a room, it's not a house, it's a place with him, which kind of goes along with what you're saying, but it's here and now.
Yeah.
I just loved it. I'm going to copy that podcast link and send it to you guys.
Yeah, like the correlation could be that the sum total of this in verse 4 is unending, unbroken relationship with him.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just sent it to you. You take your time. If you get podcasts, if you don't, that's fine. But he wrote a book called What Jesus About Heaven. I've ordered it because I really liked a lot of what he said, and it kind of fits more into my growing understanding of this walk with Jesus. So yeah, I'll shut up.
No, you don't need to shut up, Bill. Thank you for sharing that. I think that'd be really interesting to listen to that. We got to have images. We've got to have stuff in our heads. And this is kind of what's developed over time. Not that we want to deny it, but I certainly think we could think about it differently. And I think it'd be good to think about it differently. And for the purpose of maybe getting a little more, a little more insight in what it is. This, the idea of heaven is not motivating to a lot of people. Of the way it's perceived, the way it's cast now, it's kind of boring. But I don't believe it is boring. Vince says it's better. Bob, what are your thoughts?
Well, I just want to share a story. This has been a real kind of bittersweet and a touching lesson this morning.
A little louder, Bob.
What's that?
A little bit louder, please. Or move towards the mic.
This now can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this has really been a kind of a bittersweet morning to listen to this about this passage. Back in it was back in 2013, I lost my brother to ALS. Some of you might remember that. And I had been going back. He was diagnosed with ALS, which is a long, very devastating disease. And so we knew he was going to pass. So I was going back and forth to Sisters, Oregon, where he lived, and staying with him. I did not happen to be with him on that Christmas Eve in 2013. But anyway, he had a best friend. His name was Dick Miller. And Dick Miller and he, at my brother's request, had asked Dick that when he got to the point that they knew that it was probably his last day, that he asked Dick to come over and just sit with him. And so Dick did that. And Dick was telling me that when I was out for my brother's service. He said that all day long, my brother had asked that as he was dying, he wanted this very passage to be read, Dick to read it over and over and over and over to him until he was gone.
Yeah.
And apparently it was just quite a moving time as my brother was transitioning.
Yeah.
To hear that. And I was just reflecting back on for him to make that request of Dick compared to where he was when I first went out after he had been diagnosed was a miracle in his life, because he was incredibly angry about the diagnosis. He was just bitter. Why me? This whole thing. But over that next 18 months, he transitioned to be able to take that verse or that passage of scripture we've been dealing with this morning, and to really create a very, very positive, with his closest friend, a positive experience as he left this world and went and transitioned into heaven. I just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Either Jeff or Dave, either one of you guys.
Go ahead, Dave. You had your hand up first.
I did.
You did.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, you guys know me well enough to know that words are of very significant interest to me. And I think this discussion, there's a long pole in the understanding tent here. And when we read in chapter 2 and we read something that says dwelling places or mansions or whatever, most of us then tend to roll into thinking of this physical context. There's a place that's a structure. It has physical existence to it and all the rest of this. And I think that's a key to why people misunderstand or misinterpret in my perception what this says. And it goes back, I think, to the time when the Greek was being translated into first the Latin and then eventually the English, because the Latin word mansionis, I think, is the way it's pronounced. I can't see what it says here. Yeah, mansions or something like that. That Latin word lost the original Greek meaning there, because the Greek really means is a state of staying, tarrying, or abiding. So it presents the concept that the Father is staying and tarrying and abiding this environment or this place for us, so that when we die, we can stay and tarry and abide with him. And it gives a whole different slant on what it is. It isn't about a structure, it's about an eternal existence.
Yeah.
And the structure is irrelevant in terms of a physical structure type of thing. So
Good. Thank you, Dave. Yeah. Yeah, that also is really helpful. And I think we've all, as we've kind of dived into this from outside, out in other sources, I think we're kind of landing in the same area. We're not talking, we tend to gravitate towards a structure, something we can grasp, but it's really talking about something different. Now, you guys have all kind of punctuated that idea. Now, the great theologian Jeff, what do you got to say there, buddy?
Yeah, I don't have anything.
That's high in the sky.
I read a novel probably 30 years ago where a a person ends up in heaven. And the thing that struck me was a statement by a relative that met him there. And he was surprised, basically, that heaven wasn't like he thought it would be. Because it struck me that I sometimes think of heaven as a destination.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get there. I'm going to see everything. I'm going to know everything. And everything's going to be perfect. And what happens is this guy says, "Hey, we're going to class." And he goes, "What do you mean we're going to class?" And he says, "We're going to be here for eternity. Did you really think you would stop learning?" So my thought of heaven is that I will continue, and somebody used the word relationship, that I will continue not only in my relationship with Christ through eternity, but with others through eternity. And I will continue to learn more about Bob and Bill and Mike. But it will be with a clarity that I can't have here on earth. You know, we see in a mirror dimly right now. We can't know everything about each other. But I feel like heaven, to me, is going to be a perfecting of those relationships that I experienced here on earth, including my relationship with Christ, as I continue to learn more and more about Christ and about God. And so that, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but when I read scripture and I find something new about God, it's just life-giving.
Yes.
And to get to heaven and continue to gain so much more clarity about who God is and who others are in him, that is going to be heaven. That is going to bring joy, I think, to people when they get there.
Yeah, that again, and more great thoughts. And of course, those thoughts, Jeff, really, my juices are moving here. That the whole idea of what I think what I was attempting to express in the dynamic aspect of heaven is the fact it's not a place where we passively receive. This is what you're saying. It's a place where we're engaged and we continue based on the reality that exists. I'm created in God's image, and it's like a continuation of that, and use the term with clarity that a level of clarity at which we don't really can operate at this level or at this time. I mean, that's taken a pretty bad stab at what you said, but we are to be engaged in what that will be about, and that actually brings excitement to me. Yeah, Bill, and then we'll have Dave. Yeah.
On a much broader picture, what I'm finding out as we're going along with this is that prior to the Reformation, the church, and that time was a Catholic church, had a lot of voices in it. They had Franciscans and Jesuits and Benedictines. They had different versions. They had different translations. And there was a lot of very spot on translations going on. And then when we had the Reformation, because it started to be written in language we understood, they had to make a lot of decisions on interpreting words and stuff, and they wrote it out, and that became locked in. And it became, you didn't question it, and that questioning is coming out. What else could this have meant? It's really interesting to me. And and also one of the things I remember is, I think N.T. Wright said, one of the positives about the Reformation is you could read in your own language. One of the negatives was all these translations went into people's languages. It created kind of a Christian tribalism. Our language is correct, yours isn't. And so a lot of interesting thinking as you're doing this, as I look back on how things are changing.
Yeah, good. Another great comment. Thanks, Bill. Dave, what are your thoughts? Microphone, Dave.
I remember to take my hand down, but I didn't remember to turn my microphone on. So Jeff, you're going to be retiring from FedEx pretty soon, we understand. This relates to what was being said about what we know and what we don't know about each other, and what we know and what we don't know about the Lord, and how those things change in our experiences. So Jeff, I have a question for you. You're going to retire, and this is part of not knowing you well now. I don't know what your other activities are. But once you retire and have more time, you need to be teaching.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your analysis and your expression is almost constantly very well. There's two ways to pronounce the word insight. There's insight, INSIGHT, which you express very well. And there's also insight, INCITE, which means somebody is stirred to do something. And your comments do both of those things.
Thank you.
I am encouraging you to continue in that in a very active manner, because I think the Lord is speaking through you.
Thanks.
Dave, thank you. That is
That
so
was awesome.
thoughtful, and I think we all endorse those words. That's great. Jeff, when you're ready, let's try it out right here on Wednesday morning. Yeah, I think we all agree with that, Jeff. Good thoughts. Yes, Bill.
That's a thumbs up.
Oh, thumbs up. Okay. Yeah. Nice compliment, Jeff.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, we're all attempting to talk about things that we've never experienced. Thus, there's a degree, some level of fogginess. I think we've all landed on the idea that there's more. It's more than a luxury. In my analogy, the all-inclusive resort or a Jeff Bezos house with multiple stories and that kind of thing. As Dave says, it's way out of line from the idea of structure. We tend to go to structure because that's what we can relate to. But if we could, but we can explore the idea that it's much more. Relationship, unending, unbroken relationship is pretty doggone important here. Jeff, you got a comment?
Yeah, at risk of proving these guys wrong, I'll say something else. What struck me in today's discussion, Mike, was when you said it's dynamic, and how you said it changes, and
Yeah,
Chris said, I am preparing a place for you. So when I get there, my place is there. Heaven changes. It's like constant construction going on around us, and then Mike shows up and his place is ready and built, and that changes heaven. The neighborhood looks different because Mike got there. And that I've never even thought about. That was that each person brings something unique to heaven, which then changes heaven. And like I talked about earlier, as we continue to learn and meet new people and learn about their lives and all that stuff, heaven changes and we change with it.
yeah.
And hence the importance of diversity is critical.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, Jeff. Carl, is that a hand?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, go ahead. Talk to us.
We recently attended a cowboy gathering in poetry, and there was a guy there by the name of Dave Stamey. I wish you could see the cover. Maybe you can.
We got it.
Yeah,
come ride
and
with me.
I think this song. I wish I could play it for you all so you could hear it. but it's a description of this guy saying, "Come singing, come ride with me." And I just can't help but in all the descriptions of a beautiful day spent riding horseback and a beauty and all of the things that he sees. And then he talks about spending time around the campfire. And like I say, I wish I could play it for you because I think this very much encompasses what Jesus is saying to us. The title of this album on this CD is "Come Ride with Me."
Yeah.
And
I
I
like
think
that.
that is wonderful what Jesus is wanting us to do. He's inviting us to come.
Yeah.
And then the description of this song is just so beautiful. Maybe there will be a time when then I'll be able to play it for you all and you can hear it. But it's
Carl, thank you. Carl, thanks for speaking up. And we could see the little card you showed. And I think that we saw the horseman, right?
yeah,
And the term "come ride with me." I think we can grasp that idea, as you said, and it's really a great analogy. Thanks for speaking up.
yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, I think we all land in the camp that there's more to learn. I think we all say that. And what it'll be like, I don't know. Bill brought out a really important aspect in one of your earlier comments, Bill. There is a now that he's talking about, definitely. And there is a not yet. We're going to see next week where he says, you can't quite go there yet. You know, when he says, so there is a now and there's a not yet. We'll talk more about this next week. We'll get in, or 2 weeks. I won't be here next week. Maybe Jeff, you'll have something for us next week, huh?
Yeah. Right.
I'll be here in 2 weeks and we'll pick up with John 14 verses 5. I think it's 5 and 6. That is a really familiar section. I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. And we will dive into that and try to decipher what Jesus is talking about in the context of what is happening with his disciples at the moment. So have a good week, fellas. Thanks for joining in. And we'll see you next. Great discussion, guys. Thanks.
Hey, Mike, before we go, I got a question for you.
Oh,
It just at the bottom, and this thing says AI companion. Isn't that scary to some of you guys? We got some things at the bottom of the screen here, and one of them says AI companion. I don't know if we're inviting something in by that or not.
I don't see that.
I don't. It must be something you see on your end. I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that was one of the updates is that I invited some
Yeah, it's
demonic AI in my discussion.
Did it come on? Did it go off now, Jeff?
No,
It's
it's
now
at
in the
the
menu.
bottom of the screen here.
It's on the menu bar at the bottom of the screen now.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's right next to summary and record and reactions and all that stuff. It's down at the.
Well, there's an interesting comment about I think that AI is in conjunction with artificial intelligence.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
sweeping across, there's a thing on Facebook that's given kind of a warning about the vast control that advanced intelligence could have on our society. It's really, it'll really blow your mind what they're talking about. You might look that up. It's kind of a warning of how much it will take control of our world.
So
Yeah,
what does it
that's what
say,
this-
Jeff? It says AI compatible or what?
This is AI companion.
So
Before-
maybe they have to now state their relationship with AI so people know that that's going on, and you can,
Yeah.
do whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm
Gotta
not
run,
clicking on it.
guys.
I don't
Have a
want to
good-
click on it.
Have a good week.
Thanks,
We'll
Mike.
talk to you next time. Bye for now.
See ya.
Bye.
Yep.